quality, sustainable and innovative textile products. Clearly, New Delhi's firm response to safeguard labour-intensive sector like textiles, shrimp, leather and gems and jewellery has begun. Bottom line, India has not given in like other countries who were sitting like schoolboys and girls in front of the United States President in the Oval Office. The question is, how soon we will be able to finalize the deal, and till then, how will domestic industry brave the storm?
Sergio Mao as the next US ambassador to India is a very positive step. We all know that he is not only someone who has extraordinary capacities, who's contributed very greatly to the political environment in the US, but he's also a very, very close associate of President Trump's. And I think that makes a tremendous difference at this point in time when we are, we need all the bridging that we can get. So that I think is a positive turn of events which we should welcome, and we do welcome in India. We are also very hopeful that we will find a way to conclude a satisfactory, mutually beneficial free trade agreement with the United States early rather than late.
While we are dealing with the charge of financing the Russian war, Washington itself is in secret talks with Moscow on energy deals. This is Washington's hypocrisy. Trump wants American stake in Russian oil, and that is the truth behind the tariff on India. Now let me take you through the tariff issue now. About 66% of India's export to the United States, which is worth 60.2 billion, will face new tariffs at 50% or more. Textile and apparel exports, which makes up to the 35% of India's share in the US market, will now be taxed at 63.9%. This will hit major production hubs like Tirupur, NCR and Bengaluru. Diamonds and jewellery worth $10 billion hold a 40% market share in the US and are facing high tariffs of 52.1%. This will affect lakhs of jobs in Surat and Mumbai. Shrimp exports worth 2.4 billion make up to 32% of India's share and are now facing a 60% tariff. This puts aquaculture hub like Visakhapatnam at serious risk. But India stands firm. New Delhi is resolutely standing up to Trump's tariff tyranny. Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a pitch for self-reliance and Make in India products as mantra to counter the steep tariffs. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said that India must use this crisis to emerge as a reliable exporter to the world. About 30% of India's export to the United States of America, worth 27.6 billion, will not face any duties. These include products like medicines, electronics and petroleum, which have been kept out of the Trump's new tariff. Other items exempted include refined petroleum fuel and products worth $4.1 billion. Exemptions also cover books, plastics, cellulose, ethers, metals like ferromanganese, ferrosilicon, manganese and ferrochromium, along with computer equipments. The impact of the steep tariff is reflecting in Gujarat business hub of Surat. With festivals approaching, the international market slowdown could bring Surat's fabric trade to a halt. But crores of rupees can get affected, but India stands prepared. The US tariffs on India will also affect the diamond market, which accounts for 40% of India's export. That India should also be prepared for. Now, the question is, how quickly will 40-nation outreach yield results? Is Donald Trump upset because Prime Minister Modi is standing up to him? How can India cushion the impact of 50% tariff shock? Can GST reform and higher consumption offset losses triggered by tariffs? Why did government get blindsided by Trump 2.0? Will trade war affect defense and strategic relationships between India and the United States of America? Now, on this issue, I am joined by Ambassador D.P. Srivastava, former Indian diplomat, Professor Swaran Singh, Center for International Politics, JNU, and Andrew Lepaloon, business strategist and economist. Let me straight away go to Andrew, who joins me from London. What are the immediate action you think India must take to protect our businesses?
Like China, who is facing unprecedented high levels of tariffs since Trump 1.0, and in fact, since the Biden administration, China has long advocated a policy of self-reliance, firstly on technology, and secondly by pivoting its trade and investments to the global south, diversifying its markets. But at the end of the day, whether that strategy works depends on the competitiveness of your products, whether your products would be competitive in the international marketplace, because the agricultural products from India are not the only game in town. I mean, you're facing competition from other countries as well. So there was a good reason why the American market had remained the largest market for Indian exports, because your products are competitive. So if you pivoted to other economies, the end game must depend on the competitiveness and the innovation and the quality of your products.
Andrew,
now, yeah.
If I may add a substitute, wouldn't this hurt the American economy also? You know, a lot of papers are reporting sneakflation in America because of the tariffs.
Well, the effect of the tariffs, the full effect, according to many economists, is going to increase the consumer prices, and it's going to suppress the domestic market, and it's going to lead to inflation. But none of these adverse effects have come to the surface yet. It may take maybe some months before the full effect realizes themselves, and the extent of this effect is still uncertain. And of course, that you're talking about just one country, India, and China, of course, is the world's largest exporter and trader, and it's a very, very large export market in the United States. Now, China, as I said, had long pivoted towards self-reliance and also pivoting to global south. But China has the unique stranglehold, on Americans' Achilles heel, which does not apply to many other countries. I'm talking about rare earths. And of course, the rare earths is not just the supply, because you can find rare earths in other countries, but the production and the processes of rare earth, which China has developed for decades. And because these processes are very, very dirty, highly complicated, and very, very much tailored to individual products. And these products include not only mobile phones and technology, but Americans' military. And even F-35 fighter jets require these rare earths. And China has found this unique stranglehold. And that's why China is now holding firm and is now watching the scenario with caution, but also with a great deal of confidence. But I think India also is pivoting towards other trading partners, including China and the European Union and other markets in the global south. So I think that this is the right path to take.
Ambassador Srivastav, two questions to you, sir. 40 nation outreach. Do you think could this have been planned a little earlier? A lot of write-ups have come that, we got suddenly blindsided by Trump. What do you think diplomatically India needs to do in terms of pursuing trade bilateralism, sir?
You're asking me, right?
No, this is the question to Ambassador D.P. Srivastav.
Okay.
Well, let me just put things in perspective. Our $60 billion exports to US account, if they are affected, I'm not jumping to any conclusion, that accounts for roughly 1.5% of India's $4 trillion economy.
Yes.
So even if the tariff go into effect, it's not going to result in any catastrophic effect on Indian economy. Certain sectors will be affected, but that does not mean that the economy itself will crumble. So if President Trump's calculation is that he'll be able to pressurize India into changing any policy, I think that is highly mistaken assumption. Now, coming to your questions too, nobody could have anticipated it earlier, because this is the result of, if you keep in mind the chain of events, Mr. Trump is quite riled at Prime Minister Modi's refusal to accept his claim that he managed to successfully bring India-Pakistan war to an end. A claim which has simply no foundation in fact. But all this arose sometime 4 months back, and till then there was no such indication that there will be such a major escalation on the tariff front. He had started negotiating tariffs, but that was with major trading partner. India is not a major trading partner for US, which also limits US's leverage on India. Now, the last question that you asked, whether how successful this 30-nation drive could be.
Yes.
This depends on the competitiveness of the Indian goods in those markets, and this is not something which you can have an instant answer, because it depends also on how competitive the domestic industries in those countries and who are our competitors. So we'll have to wait and watch, but it is safe to assume that it will not be easy to find a substitute to American markets at such a short time.
Okay. Professor Swaran Singh, two questions to you, sir. One, do you think that this can have an impact on a strategic and defense relationship? If you would have read the editorial in one of the newspapers today, the Deputy Defense Secretary in America, instead of calling it Indo-Pacific, sir, has started to use the word Asia-Pacific. And he's the one who's renegotiating AUKUS. So the shift is broader, it seems. Your comments, sir?
There is no doubt, since President Trump is on the lead in showcasing that anger or anxiety vis-a-vis India, much of his team, in case they wish to stay in office, will have to propitiate that sentiment. And we will hear these kind of voices one after another. Just like Trump's distractors within the United States, you heard John Bolton recently, will be really saying that Trump is pushing India towards China and Russia and so on. So this will continue, but if you look at the larger canvas, India-US relationship is very wide and very thick. It's way beyond simply a relationship of imports and exports. And I think that will continue to survive, despite there is going to be a little rough weather, as I mentioned. But the interdependence is built over decades on both sides. So that's not going anywhere. And I think the ideal way, other than speculating about who will get impacted and how much impact will be, when we will get relief, etc., no doubt India's larger macro economy is not going to get impacted, but specific exporters, I'm sure, as was mentioned, will get affected. To me, lessons lie in history. We are lucky to have examples from Trump's first term. In 2018, 19, again, he had raised about 25% tariffs on steel, 10% on aluminium. What India did, India went to WTO, and we found certain amount of relief there. And likewise, several other examples of also at some stage Trump removing benefits of India during the first term on generalized system of references. Okay. India negotiated sector-specific areas, so negotiations will continue, and India will diversify, explore other areas. In fact, raise of tariffs of India's exports to US will make these exporters look at other destinations that they were not looking earlier.
Okay.
And it will go other places. Just 30 seconds to give example of European Union, for example, where India, out of $200 billion of apparels and textiles that they import collectively, has a share of $5 billion. Obviously, with this negotiation of FTA with EU, if it is accelerated, will open up that market. So there is going to be a transition period, hiatus, and short period of, I think, some challenges in some areas. But this is not the first time India is facing challenges of this kind, and I'm sure sooner rather than later we'll find relief both in terms of Indian export promotion missions, Indian customs promotion missions,
Sir.
India's all kinds of other incentivization and facilitation, which is already kick-starting now.
So let me ask you a broader question, and I open this question to my other two esteemed guests also. Professor, do you think that the Americans are allowing the new administration, both Russia and China, their sphere of influences, marking a slow rise of China even without fighting a war, where Russians have been embroiled? Do you think that Americans are allowing both Russia and China their sphere of influences?
I think already for last about 20 years, if not more, you can go back to President Obama's period and his pivot to Asia. US had already recognized China as predominant player in the larger Asian or even Eurasian region. And lately, the fact that Ukraine war has seen, no limits partnership between Russia and China has sort of catapulted China in a very, very different fashion. Now, Trump, the way President Trump has deserted several international arrangements, institutions and norms, which have undergirded US global leadership for almost last century now, particularly after Second World War, is creating that kind of political vacuum. So even if United States, is not deliberately promoting China's rise, and even if Chinese don't want to take it, that political vacuum will see, Russia, China, India taking greater responsibilities, or BRICS taking greater responsibilities. So there can't be a political vacuum. And if United States is ending up creating that political vacuum, at least in the immediate region in Eurasia, Asia, Asia Pacific, etc., other nations will step in. There is no doubt. And who is right now most capable in terms of economic heft, leverages? China obviously is an economy almost catching up with the United States. And if you see the way India is feeling pushed in the fold of Russia and China, and we are going to see in Tianjin at end of the month 3 leaders meeting and reviving the Russia, India, China strategic triangle, it's inevitable. That is how the larger canvas looks to me. And in that sense, the whole almost 4 decades of relative decline of United States is getting only further accelerated.
Okay. Andrew, your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that we are seeing a major paradigm shift in international relations, not seen in many decades, as pointed out by our co-panelists. The whole world order has now been totally upended. But don't forget that countries are now, starting with the United States, weaponizing other countries' dependence. For example, Trump is weaponizing the US dollar, as weaponizing the US market being the first largest in the world. And of course, it's weaponizing its military dominance. So it's using this dependence and weaponizing it to bend the whole world to Americans' will. And of course, China is also weaponizing the dependence of the United States on China's rare earths. But at the end of the day, countries have to rely on themselves, on their strengths. And the whole idea of blocks belong to the dustbin of the past. For example, during the Cold War, this no longer works. It's now a partnerships, not forming a direct bloc, because neither China nor India nor other countries want to make an enemy of the United States. They still want to maintain good relations with the United States. But on the other hand, they are recalibrating their relationship with other countries, with the EU, with Africa, with Latin America, with other countries in Asia. So the whole world is changing. There is a lot of me and you and me in this interconnected global supply chain and trading system. And of course, countries in the global south do not want their sovereignty, the development rights to be trampled upon by Trump's American first. Not that they would like to form a bloc, as I said, but they are, as the time is ripe for countries in the global south, India, China, and other countries to work together for a fairer, a more cooperative, and a more sustainable world, a kind of world order not directly dominated by any single country.
Ambassador Srivastav, your view on it, keeping in mind the sort of complicated neighborhood which has emerged for us from Afghanistan to Pakistan, sir, from Maldives to Bangladesh, with a fractured polity in Myanmar?
Let me first make a point. You mentioned how the Trump's policies will drive other countries into Russian or Chinese spheres of influence.
No, I didn't say that. I said, do you agree with this view, which had been published in a paper, that the Americans are allowing Russians and Chinese to have this sphere of influence?
No,
not a statement.
I do not agree with that view. And one clear example is that America has used tariff as a weapon even against its NATO allies or European allies. So in President Trump's mind, there is no connection between market and geopolitics. And that is also true of other geographies. And for India in particular, partnership with China or Russia is not a substitute for American market. We run something like $40 or $47 billion surplus with America. We run a $97 billion deficit with China. So America, despite the difficult phase in our relationship, is not our problem. Our problem lies elsewhere. Your question, how these things will affect our region, that is from Afghanistan to Myanmar. And I think there we have to bear in mind that the growing competition to Indian presence in this region does not come from US, it comes from China. And so far as the American influence is concerned, that is, in Indian perception or popular perception, what is there in their minds is the tilt towards Pakistan. America, President Trump received Pakistani army chief in White House. Now, this may have nothing to do with India.
Okay.
It is linked to American priorities in the Middle East. And right now, the highest priority is Iran. And I think it is the services rendered by Pakistan vis-a-vis Iran, which is its immediate neighbor, which has brought the American generosity. American aid comes with a price.
Okay.
So you just let me just complete. On 10th June, US CENTCOM chief said that this is the best time to hit Iran. In the same speech, he commended Pakistan for being a valuable partner in fight against terrorism. In recent years, there has been no big terrorist catch. And if you look at the history of last 20 years, actually Pakistan undermined American presence in Kabul. So we have to look for an explanation elsewhere, and that is 3 days later, on 13 June, Israel attacked Iran, and on 15 June, Asim Munir was received in White House, and the same day, Pakistan announced closure of 5 trading posts with Iran. So there may be something more to it, in terms of intelligence sharing or providing airspace. Okay. So I think it's an interesting time, and we have to avoid these simplistic answers.
Okay. 30 seconds to you, Professor Swaran Singh, and 30 seconds to you, Andrew. I know it's TV, but it's TV, and I'm sorry, I have not invented the medium. Can China and India, despite fighting a war and number of skirmishes, can they have a peaceful rise together, or is just a fable? Professor Swaran Singh.
I think there is not a choice here. India and China, the way they are large-sized Asian, rapidly developing two countries, they will only have to constantly try and manage their relationship. And I think they have been able to manage their relationship fairly well, other than very, very few and far in between aberrations. During the time when they were having huge forward military deployments, eyeball to eyeball on the border, their trade was still rising, going up all the way to $136 billion. So they know how to manage these multiple pulls and pressures. And I think that's an ideal example where, unlike President Trump disrupting the entire relationship suddenly, nothing such happened between India and China, at least so far in recent decades. And therefore, I think that piecemeal or snail pace, whatever way you want to look at it, gradual incremental connect and cooperation will continue despite occasional contestations and even confrontations. And I think that is what also partly worries President Trump, that he's not able to cast a wedge between India and China.
Okay. Andrew, 30 seconds. Is it possible or is it just a fable?
I think that both countries should really set aside their differences, not to forget them, but not to focus on them, but while concentrating on areas of cooperation, because there are a great deal of complementarity between two countries, the largest countries by population, and still facing a lot of development challenges and common challenges on climate change and energy security, but not only relationship between these two countries, but relationship of these two countries with the rest of the global south. I think there's a great opportunity out there when the whole world order has now been totally upended, in time for a more cooperative and more nuanced kind of international environment.
Ambassador Srivastav, last question. Is it possible? 30 seconds to you, sir.
There's enough space for both India and China to peacefully exist and grow forward, but it depends also on the Chinese perception, whether they take this opportunity to build bridges to India or put more pressure, assuming that India does not have support elsewhere.
Okay.
We'll have to wait and watch.
We'll have to wait and watch. Thank you so much for joining me on this very engaging conversation. So this was all I had on point 1. But the second on point is on Jammu. The cloudburst in Jammu and Kashmir, Katra, has left people dead. Let me play out those visuals, what has happened in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, from Mandi to Uttar Kashi. I mean to say, nature is telling